it's impossible to go from 0 to infinity by succession. And likewise, it's impossible to go from a sort of minus infinity to 0. Now, since it's impossible to cross infinity, and we established this earlier, if the universe has always been here, if it's existed eternally, regardless of whatever state it's existed in, the present moment could have never arisen. You see, in order for the present moment to arrive or to be actualized, this would mean that yesterday would have had to be arrived at and be actualized, and the day before that, and then the day before that. And this would mean that the universe would have literally had to run through and cross an infinite number of previous moments in order to reach the present moment, which is impossible. So, in other words, the past would have had to cross infinity to come to the present moment if the universe did not begin to exist a finite time ago. And if this were the case, the present moment could have never arisen. If you believe the universe has always existed, if you go back just to any point in the past, let's say 100 quintillion years, how many years or days or hours or moments or quantum moments did the universe have to traverse or go through in order to get to this moment? It's infinite.
Does that argument sound familiar? Think you might have heard it before?
If I promised to give you a chocolate bar after an infinite amount of time, would I ever give you the chocolate bar? No, I don't think I would, because when would we be able to say, okay, an infinite amount of time has passed, pay up the chocolate bar? Wouldn't happen. So my next question would be, could there have been an infinite amount of time before right now? No, there couldn't have been, because we never would have reached this moment in time.
Yes, Veritas 48 is basically restating VenomFangX's chocolate bar argument all over again. What's especially dismaying about this is that there were so many video responses to Venom's chocolate bar video, responses rebutting his conception or misconception of infinity, that they're practically a YouTube subgenre. I was hoping that Veritas would address some of these rebuttals in the second part of his video, but I'm sorry to say he didn't do that. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not even a theorist, but even I can understand this elementary concept of what most cosmologists talk about when they talk about an infinite amount of time. This is a picture of communitychannel. I hope you know who she is because she makes the wittiest, the most entertaining videos on YouTube. So check out her channel if you're not already subscribed to her. In this particular picture, communitychannel is talking about me. But for the moment, let's say that the space between your hands represents an infinite amount of time. Now, the way that Veritas and VenomFang discuss it, you get the idea that we would need to start at point A and pass through an infinite amount of time before we could get to point B. But that's not the idea. This is the point that needs repeating. An infinite amount of time is not something you need to traverse. If you exist within an infinite amount of time, then you have an infinite amount of time behind you and an infinite amount of time ahead of you. In fact, you could place yourself anywhere on this timeline and still have infinite amounts of time behind you and ahead of you. So the idea is not traversing an infinite amount of time to get from point A to point B, but points A and B existing inside the infinite amount of time. So I think this whole Christian apologetics notion of needing to traverse infinity is something of a red herring. Also, Veritas is confusing two different concepts of infinity. And this has been said so many times on YouTube, I'm kind of embarrassed to repeat it. But let's say you're at point A and you need to reach point B 2 blocks away. Well, before you could cross 2 blocks, you'd have to cross 1 block. Before you could cross 1 block, you'd have to cross half a block. Before you'd cross half a block, you need to cross a quarter block. Before you cross a quarter block, you need to cross 1/16 of a block. You can keep breaking time down into infinitesimal increments, and according to this model, you'd never get to where you're going. But In actuality, if you need to get from point A to point B 2 blocks away, and you're ambulatory, you just walk the 2 blocks. Well, it's the same with Veritas's concept of point A and point B. He keeps breaking down the distance between the 2 points until it's theoretically impossible to get from one to the other. Also, this whole concept of time beginning with the Big Bang means time as it is currently measured. That is, our understanding of time being divided into minutes, hours, and days wouldn't have had any meaning before the Big Bang. That doesn't mean that the passage of time, or something akin to the passage of time, going from one moment to another, outside of what we now understand as time, call that duration or something like that. It doesn't mean that that wouldn't have existed. So yes, it's not conceptually impossible for matter or mass energy to have existed for an eternity and to go on existing for another eternity. Scientists have not concluded that mass energy and duration just sprang into existence at the Big Bang. Now, I greatly appreciate the part of Veritas's video where he addressed objections to the Kalam argument, but objections to the concept of needing to traverse an infinite amount of time to get from one point to another. Objections to that are just so all over the place at YouTube that I'm disappointed he didn't address any of them. And because Veritas's defense of the Kalam argument was premised on this flawed understanding of infinity, it was impossible for me to accept the rest of Veritas's argument as well.